Hello and welcome to ORH Hatter, where we're looking ahead to the visit of West Brom on Friday night. And this week I'm joined by Jamie Castle, as always. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, not too bad. 2 pods in 2 days. It's a bit strange to be back so soon, but thanks to Sky for putting West Brom at home on a Friday night, and other personal arrangements means we can't record later in the week. So good to preview this one, albeit pretty early.
And this week we're joined by Lewis Jones. How are you doing, Lewis?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, mate. Bit of rotation in the squad after a busy few days for you boys.
Yeah, luckily no injury crisis for us, but we've just brought in Lewis to replace Adam for this week's episode. As I mentioned there, we're looking ahead to the visit of West Brom, and it's off of the back of that calamitous, collapse in Coventry, which was a real. I mean, we discussed it on yesterday's pod, so we won't go into it, but it's a real low point in what's been a season of low points. But hopefully, Friday's an opportunity to lift that. But before we talk about that, don't forget to follow us on socials at ORH Hatter, like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, and rate us 5 stars on your audio listening platform. We really appreciate all the support, and it helps us to produce the best content for you, including our new merch, which Jamie is kindly modelling one piece of. He's got the marvellous Nakamba t-shirt on, which looks absolutely fantastic, Jamie.
Absolutely marvellous, I think you'll find.
It does look marvellous. But there is plenty on offer on our website. That's Oak Road Hatter. Check us out and see if there's something that you can maybe even put in a stock in this Christmas. We'll get straight into it. We've got West Brom coming in on Friday, who, when you think about it, all I can think of is Josh Maja being a very prolific goal scorer this season, and they are having a great start to the season. But I've looked at their form this evening very, very quickly as I've got home from work, and it's actually pretty shocking. They've drawn their last 4 and lost 2 before that. So they haven't won in the last 6 games, and they've only scored 1 since the 28th of September, Jamie. Is this an opportunity for us to bounce back from what's been a disappointing weekend, or are we about to give another team a win?
I mean, I think to an extent we've got no choice. We need to try and bounce back. I think West Brom started the season off really well. Maja was in really hot form, 7 in his first 7, I think it was. Obviously, an excellent centre forward at this level, a player that we've come up against quite a bit over the years, especially Sunderland in that League One season. But as you say, they're out of form. They're 6 games without a win. I mean, alternatively, 4 games unbeaten, given they've drawn the last 4. Defensively, pretty sound, which I think will obviously cause us a bit of issues, given that, I mean, to be fair, we've picked up a little bit in the attacking department, especially with Eli scoring 2 and 2 now. But previously, we weren't the most free flowing or sort of most chance created going forward. So their defence could cause us an issue. But yeah, I think we have no choice but to make the most of, I mean, almost the perfect settings for this sort of Luton team. I mean, especially if we go back to the Luton of old, as we have done at home recently, under the lights, Friday night, live on Sky, against the West Brom team that will be up for the fight, no doubt. They've got players that are used to fighting. So yeah, I mean, big game not only for Luton but obviously for Rob Edwards as well, and without, I guess, that being too damning, probably a must win for him.
Yeah, it's a tough weekend for everyone involved with Luton, but Rob Edwards has come out and he's put the blame on himself, which Colton Morris then took away from him later on, Lewis. Is it must win, as Jamie says, for Rob Edwards?
It should be. Is it? Probably not. Is the answer I'd give. It should be must win. It's quite simply, we're in the bottom 3. You need to win games to get out of that. And that's what we need to do. But will he be sacked? I think, as we've seen so far this season, he's probably not going to be, or at least until the international break coming up in November. So 3 points would be lovely, but it's difficult to see whether or not that will happen.
Yeah, it's it's difficult to see the club going and sacking him. I think the only way he doesn't finish probably this season with Luton is if he walks away. With the way he's been speaking recently, it actually wouldn't be surprising if he does walk, but hopefully he's able to turn things around because everybody associated with Luton does love him. I just wanted to look at this West Brom team that's going to be coming to visit us because, as Jamie mentioned, they've got Josh Madger, who's scored 7 goals this season. Despite their blunt attack recently, they have got some very dangerous attackers. The likes of Tom Fellows is really one that springs to mind. He's really burst into a real star over the last couple of seasons, Jamie.
He has, yeah. He's a player that I think probably will be taken a look at by some teams in the top flight in the coming, maybe not necessarily next summer, but summer after that. Certainly a player that you think can break into that sort of top flight, the likes of sort of Bowen has, for example, previously. I think overall it's a team that seems very familiar to Luton Town as a club over the years. I think, as you say, obviously the West Brom as a team we've faced. I mean, for 4 or 5 of the last 5 or 6 years, given sort of our stint in the Championship. But individually, you've obviously got Carlos Corberán's in charge, and he was the boss of Huddersfield during the semi-final defeat a couple of years back. Josh Madger was in that Sunderland team that we were fighting for at the top end of League One with. John Swift was at Reading, and I think we were linked with him previously. Same with Alex Mowat at Barnsley. Obviously, we all know we've got some big ties to Barnsley in our team. So yeah, all over the pitch, it seems like there's been some links with Luton one way or the other. Palmer in goal, we had obviously during that pretty crazy goalkeeper stint. So yeah, like overall, it's a team that should feel very familiar with Luton, and I think to an extent that might do us pretty good because I think they'll know what to expect, but that means in a way, weirdly, we'll be able to sort of give it to them. And I think sometimes if a team comes here with not knowing to expect, they might just play their own way anyway, whereas they might, West Brom, obviously the players knowing what it's like coming to Luton, might play up to it a little bit too much rather than focusing on their own game, especially given their recent form. So yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting game on Friday and lots of interesting matchups.
And whilst we haven't got the results of the last couple of games, apart from the Watford game, which now feels like a bit of an anomaly, we have seen some players come into a bit of form, particularly up front with Morris and Eli. I think Eli, we've spoken about it previously, really needed that first goal, and that could really set him off. So, I mean, how important is it, Lewis, that both of those two are now playing well and playing well together with Chong behind them, who seems to have taken a more free role rather than being out wide the majority of the time?
Yeah, it's essential. Having 2 strikers that are firing away and firing in goals, it's essential if you want to get any sort of points, let alone compete at the top end of the table. We all knew that these two have the ability to play top end Championship, possibly even lower end Premier League. You just haven't quite seen it so far. And in regards to Chong, he's in a bit of a weird role for me at the moment. It's kind of like a left centre mid and central attacking mid hybrid. Whether or not it suits him, I personally don't think it does. But that's the system Edward wants to go with. It's kind of a 5-3-2 and then a 3-4-3. It's an odd one. I think it's a bit of a nuanced system, which again is kind of the reason behind why we're having so many issues, which Morris and Adebayo maybe taken away some of that shine on. Is this the right system? Because they're firing goals, because they're playing well. So if they keep it up, look, we can easily get a win. We know that, but you worry if these two stop scoring.
I don't want to be too negative there as a pod. I mean, I just pick up, Finn, what you said about the Watford game maybe being a bit of an outlier. I think that's difficult to an extent because, yeah, obviously we were so bad in that second half in particular against Coventry, but you've got 2 games of football at home in the last week, sort of being Watford and Sunderland, where we were like almost near perfect to an extent. That Watford game was pretty much perfect. That we come out of that 3-0 winners, and that was by no means flattering on the performance. Sunderland obviously wasn't perfect because we conceded 2 pretty sloppy goals, but in the performance we were very, very good against a side. I mean, look, they're up there now with one of the best starts in the Championship ever, right? I mean, in terms of how good they're going at the minute. So I don't want to I don't want it to come across as too negative. I mean, commentary first half, we thought we were okay. I think probably people played down a little bit too much how bad we may have been in that first half. I thought defensively we were fairly good, and we were good going forwards in the moments that we had. So I don't want that second half to take the shine off it too much. I think that there's enough to go into that West Brom game with confidence. As you say, Eli, 2-2. Morris has been excellent for the last week. He's been exactly what we need in a leader and a captain in terms of sort of going forwards. As Lewis said, the Chong role, whether it suits him, I mean, I think it's still fairly early days because we only switched to the system against Watford, right? So he's only been in it for 3 games now, but fundamentally we just want him to be close to those front two, right, and latch on any knock-ons, and you know how good he can be on the ball. I think disappointing in terms of his output and goals and assists. He needs to himself contribute more, and I think he has a much higher ceiling, but I think that there's certainly some confidence. There's certainly some confidence to be taken. I think just the frustrating thing really now is in terms of player availability. It wasn't in a good place anyway. Hopefully Mengi and Baptiste are back for Friday, but it seems like Burke is out still. It seems like Anderson's out still. Obviously we've lost Holmes and Doughty, not to injury but to suspension now, which is really frustrating. Which I think makes the task a little bit more difficult with Rob, whether we persist with the back three. People saying, "Oh, we should go back to the back four." I think you're now basing that based on one really bad half at Coventry, when to an extent you have to give Coventry credit, but fundamentally we did the back three in the last 2 home games against overall one very, very good side and one decent side. Okay, I think Watford have dropped off and they're bad away from home, but let's not forget that they're still doing all right this season. And we played the back three, and in both games we were by far the dominant side for almost 3 hours of football. So yeah, I don't want the fans listening to this sort of overreacting too much. I think we just have to go into the game with confidence, almost forgetting the commentary game, to take the positives from the last 2 home games and go into the game on Friday and give the boys all of our support, because they'll need it for sure.
I mean, you've mentioned the player availability there. We were already pretty light in defence as it is, and then the red card to Holmes, or the second yellow for Holmes against Coventry, and that yellow card, which we've spoken about in depth in the last episode, for Alfie, which is just absolutely ridiculous that he got a yellow card for what seems to be trying to play a free kick quickly, means he will miss the game against West Brom, and he's probably been our best player this season. I think it's pretty hard to look past him. He's massively stepped up defensively, I would say, and he's hit form a bit with his deliveries as well. So it won't be just defensively we miss him, but also his deliveries from set pieces and deliveries from open play. Do you think it'll be a game that Joe Johnson comes in, Lewis, and plays on that left wing back role, or can you see Edwards changing the shape?
Whether it's left wing back or left back in a 4, I don't see how he can't come in all honesty. I know there'll be discussions around whether Hashi could go left wing back and if Moses a right wing back, and then Johnson goes out left centre half. It's impossible to see him not coming in for me. Whether it's a left back, a left centre back, or a left wing back, the options there are so limited unless we have people coming back into the side like a Mengi or an Anderson or a Burke. But it would be interesting to see him, because obviously he's only started 1 game this season, and that was against Burnley, which obviously was a bit of a battering and a baptism of fire for him as a young lad. But he's been away with England. He started 2 games. He played, I think, 70 minutes nearly in both. So he's clearly got the talent. He just needs to show it more at a Luton Championship competitive level.
I think just to add to that, I think we'll see exactly what Edwards thinks of Joe Johnson on Friday, right? Because you're getting to the point where he's probably putting his career on the line for a young kid. I think he's shown what he can do, Joe Johnson, in terms of going forwards. I think looks a little bit shaky defensively at times. But yeah, we'll see how much Rob Edwards believes in him, because if he does believe in him, then he'll back him to put in a performance on Friday. I agree with Lewis. I think unless there's some really positive surprises in terms of availability, someone like a Burke that might come back before we expect, then yeah, I can't help but think Johnson gets a start, because I can't see him going away from a back three. So that means it's got to be Hashi, McGuinness +1. Hopefully, it seems like in Edwards' last press conference that Mengi should be okay for Friday. So that means it's a Hashi, McGuinness, Mengi back three. Then you got Moses on the right and Johnson on the left. So I think that seems like at this point, unless there are any surprises in terms of fitness and selection, then I think it's almost a back five that picks itself at this point.
And if Johnson comes in, which we've both said we've all said we expect him to, he could be in for a tough test against someone like Tom Fellows or Grady Dion Garner Lewis. So it will be both an opportunity and a test for him to prove himself at Luton once again, when he has stepped up previously. The FA Cup game away at Everton is the one that really stands out in terms of his performances when he's played last season.
Yeah, I think it's clear to see that Edwards trusts him more on that left wing back spot than the left centre back. Obviously, with Doughty going in there against Watford, so what we can expect to see him there. It will be a tough game. A fun fact I saw was that Dion Garner is actually only 26 years old, which absolutely shocked me. I thought the bloke was about 31. But either him or Fellows or Johnston will be a massively tough test. They're all quick, they're all very technical, and they all can deliver. So he will need to be switched on from minute 0 to 90th minute if he starts. So I do feel bad for him. Again, it's a bit of a baptism of fire. Burnley and West Brom, two teams that are up there now and will probably be up there come the end of the season. But he's clearly got the talent. He's been in and around the squad in the Premier League as well, in and around the England under-19s. So if these managers all trust him enough to think he can come in this squad, he's clearly got the talent. Let's hope if he starts that he shows it.
And another area which we might see some changes because of players returning and also the need to be maybe a bit more defensive-minded, thinking about who's available, is that midfield. Personally, I think we might see Nakamba come back in to start because he offers a bit more defensively, Jamie. But there's also a likelihood of Shandon Baptiste returning potentially. We don't really know his fitness, but he did show positive signs at the start of the season.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the only reason why Edwards might go from a 3 to a 4, right, is lack of centre halves versus pretty excellent depth in midfield, right, where you've got Nakamba and Krause who are excellent at the jobs that they do. Clearly, he loves Jordan Clark. I mean, I don't disagree with it. I think he's good technically. I think there probably are better than him now, but I do like him on the ball, Jordan Clark. I think he offers a lot in the press as well. And then yeah, you've got Baptiste to come in who looked good early on in the season. Hopefully we can keep him fit as the Brentford fans have said. But yeah, that's probably the one reason why Edwards might shift it to a 4, is because you could have a midfield three of Krause or Nakamba plus Baptiste plus Clark, or you could do Krause and Nakamba plus Clark or Baptiste. So you could restructure that midfield in a way that gives you that strength at the back, that almost maybe one of them, like a Nakamba, drops into the 3 on the ball, for example, and offers that outlet. And then clearly you got Chong in that sort of quasi 10 role that Lewis mentioned earlier, where he could sort of pack that midfield to almost make it a midfield 4 as well. So lots of options in that midfield area, which might be the sort of the factor that makes Edwards go from a back 3 to a back 4.
Yeah, I think Jamie touched on Chong there, and at his time in Birmingham, he did actually play centre midfield, so he could also play there. I think you've also got Pelly, who divides opinion, but coming against Watford and was excellent. And you've also got Nelson, who he clearly trusted in there because he brought him on against Sunderland, debatably the best team in the league. So as Jamie says, I think a 4 is definitely not off the cards when you consider the depth of options we have there and the amount of players that can play there. It seems a bit silly to not do it, from my opinion, but obviously we know Edwards' reluctance to switch to a 4 and his passion for the 5.
And it would be I think, quite well celebrated by a lot of fans if it was a back four with a midfield diamond coming in, because as Jamie's mentioned, we do have a lot of availability in midfield and very little availability in defence. And seeing that diamond return would bring back memories of the Nathan Jones era, I'm sure, for a lot of people. We're going to come on to a predicted lineup later on, but Lewis, we asked a question on the last pod. Do we think Luton have a discipline problem after the number of cards we've had this season so far? And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know. I personally think we're actually a bit of a soft touch. And then last season, I don't think we got a single red off the top of my head. So I'm not sure what can happen between last season and this season. Whether we've just suddenly lost a bit of head loss in games. Maybe Holmes again was just a bit silly. He knew he was on the yellow. What he did there, he wasn't really going to go anywhere. Had you right, McGuinness was there to cover, and he just pulled him back. Could be due to tiredness. He's not started a single game, and he's coming to start 3. I think it's just pure silliness and a bit of being unlucky. I don't think it's anything like we're a nasty lack of discipline side. It's just, it is what it is kind of thing, quite simply put.
Yeah, it seems to be all coming in at once, all these issues, which is, I mean, very frustrating when we didn't get a single red card last season. On the second tier podcast that came out most recently, they also suggested that we have, well, I think the exact words they used were soft underbelly and showing a lack of fight or something, which, as hard as it is to listen to, is probably true, to be honest, in the way we've played this season. Jamie, do you think soft underbelly is a way we can describe our team currently?
I think soft underbelly, yes. I think it's really harsh to say that the players lack fight. I don't think it's a fighting issue. I think you can see in moments that the players are giving it their all. I think you can't blame any one player and say that, oh, we think they've only given 75%. I think they all are giving 100% or close to 100% in terms of effort. I think it's just almost at times a lack of a brain, right? It's sort of thinking about mentally the right times to press, or doing something silly, or forcing a pass when you didn't need to force a pass, or choosing the wrong option. I think that, and that's what makes it really frustrating, and really hard to gauge from, I guess, a podcast perspective, because I think the issues are easily fixed, and I don't think, as much as I agree with both sides of the argument on terms of Edwards in or out, I think it's a pretty easy fix, and I think if things just need the tide just needs to change slightly, and I think, as we saw in those 2 games against Watford and Sunderland, like, if we just keep at that level, things will change, and we'll be all right, and hopefully more than all right. Yeah, I would love to do a bit of a scientific deep dive on what actually is wrong right now at Luton, because it's not fight. Is it soft underbelly? Probably. I think there is a softness to us at times, but I think at times it's just a bit of a lack of a brain, which is weird to say about a former Premier League star, because if anything, it should be those players that are mentally above everyone else, because I don't think the Championship is decided based on a team's strength in terms of height or speed or just general physicality. I think it's normally decided based on their mental abilities to switch on at the right moment. So yeah, it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think another thing to take into consideration is the amount of combinations we've had as a back 3 or back 5. It's been absolutely crazy. Like, how many people played centre back this season? Off the top of my head, it's probably about 8 or 9 have made up a back 3 between their own partnerships, and that can't be helping. Obviously, you'd say at the moment our biggest issue is keeping them out. Obviously, barring that Watford game, whether that was a blip or just quite simply we were just magnificent on the day, which we were. It's been tough defending and watching us defend this season. So that can't be helping Edwards at all, where he wants to have a setback 3 and we just can't make it. Whether that's Walter's been out of a broken foot, which is just ridiculously unlucky. Anderson, who somehow missed probably about over a year of football now, who's never really had any big injuries before. Mengi just keeps picking up these little niggles, and same with Burke. It's just, I do feel sympathy for Edwards. I think at times he does bring on himself with maybe the lack of change in formation, but he can't defend and he can't attack because he's a manager. He's not on the pitch stopping his goals and scoring his goals. So a bit of sympathy I think needs to be had, especially after that Coventry game where the first half it was good enough. It was an expert Luton 2 years ago away performance. Didn't really give him much. Kaminsky made it to make one good save, and that was it. Second half, obviously, It all fell apart, which is fair to say. But the signs are there, and I think he keeps coming out and maybe bringing the pressure onto himself, Edwards, saying it's on me. I don't think that's really helping anyone. I think people are starting to get a bit fed up with that, where saying it's on you, and everyone's saying, well, it's on him all the time. Is he the right man? He clearly is, for me, at the moment. Obviously, if this carries on, we've got to take a new turn. But as Jamie said, we've got to remain positive, because if you don't, things will start to go wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it was something else I was listening to where they said it was a lack of fight, but what was actually said is we're too nice. And I think that might be a reflection of Edwards in terms of his personality. He's incredibly nice and everyone likes him for him as a person. You saw it last season with the way he dealt with the Lockyer situation and the way other people spoke about him. Is being too nice something that's maybe being shown on the pitch in terms of, I don't know, it's a difficult one to say because of the way we've played recently, Jamie, but being too nice certainly won't help get results.
No, it doesn't. I mean, you look at Sunderland, I think they are absolute case in point in terms of how they came to us on Wednesday. And I think, yeah, at times fans can be a little bit about it because it's annoying when to see your team lose when you don't deserve to lose. But they absolutely aced that away performance in hindsight. Okay, they were dominated from start to finish, obviously contrary to what a lot of the Sunderland fans said on social media, but that they were excellent. That they did the dark arts really well, and it's something that we did as a team a few years ago. And I think we've just lost that edge to us a little bit. So yeah, I think we need to switch on to that in terms of winning fouls. And I hate to see it as a fan at times. I don't want to go overboard, but I'm not saying we need to suddenly turn into a Wycombe Wanderers of 3 or 4 years ago, because that isn't nice to watch either. But just at the right moment, just to maybe slow the game down, or because the Alfie Doughty thing, the yellow card was that at 1-0 up? Was that, I think it might have been.
It was 1 or 2-0 when he got that.
Yeah, so we were ahead. So why do you need to speed the game up? You're ahead. Like, just take your time. Like, we're strong in the set piece. Get a ball into the box. Of course, it might have worked out, and you played the ball in behind, and you're maybe trying to be a bit smart about it. But just sort of have the brain to slow the game down a little bit, and at the right times, just control the game and keep your head. I think there's a lot of talk about potential head loss at times. I think you don't help yourself when you're trying to be too smart or play the game in a way that might be, you think, really good, but just sometimes bringing it back to basics, keeping your head and just sort of slowing the game down, it can't hurt anyone.
Yeah, and we are missing sort of that game management dark arts side of thing, and we'll talk a bit more about that after we go to a quick break. But before that break, again, don't forget to check out our new merch range on our website. So that's at Oak Road Hatter. If Jamie could kindly model that marvellous Nakamba shirt again, that's one of the many products we have available. So check out our merch and maybe get something for yourself or for someone else with Christmas coming up. But we're going to go to a quick break now, and when we get back, we'll be talking game management and making some predictions. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Jamie and Lewis. We're going to talk a bit more about the game management and sort of the dark art side of thing now. I mean, we saw on Saturday the subs that came on didn't really help us in the way we played. It sort of completely changed the way we were trying to play. And that has been something that we've seen a few times under Edwards, where either the subs don't seem to come on soon enough, or it's not the subs that people were expecting or that can utilise or take advantage of what's happening on the pitch, Jamie. Do you think it's an issue with his decisions, or is it just the way we're trying to manage the games at the moment?
Yeah, I think at the weekend in particular, Edwards, I think by his own admission, would say he got it wrong in terms of the changes. I mean, overall, if we go through them, it was obviously Nakamba for Chong, and I can see that in terms of trying to put in an extra body in the middle. Brown for Morris is just like for like, so fine. I just think it's at 2-1. I think was it 2-1 or 2-2? He did Corley on for Eli. I think when you've gone from 2-0 up to 2-2, quite clearly what you're doing isn't working. So why maintain that system, or why maintain the two up top? You just need to get an extra body somewhere else on the pitch where just sort of plug that hole where it might not like be working. For example, it could be there's a hole out on the wide left, which ultimately is where that cross came for the Torp goal was. You could stick Joe Johnson in on the back four and just cover that left back position. You could push Moses further up the pitch in terms of a sort of a more wing type role, and then go to a back four of Hashi, McGuinness, Holmes, and Johnson. So you could switch it up in that way and just plug the hole in that different area, because I don't think there was a hole up top with Eli for Corley. So I just think that change in particular is the thing that I think really does frustrate me, and people will talk about and lambast Corley fairly or unfairly about Joe Taylor should have been on, but I don't think it was a Joe Taylor thing either. It was just just change the system and think about where the holes are on the pitch. So yeah, I think in particular at the weekend, Edwards did get it wrong, and he would admit that himself, just to manage the game a little bit in those moments. Because I think at 2-2, almost every Luton fan would have taken a point, albeit would have the reaction been the same? Probably. I think the fans would have still reacted pretty badly against losing a 2-0 lead to go 2-2, but certainly 3-2 was it was a lot worse because it's put us into the bottom three.
Yeah, and one player that did come on and actually did show some positive signs, and has done on a number of occasions this season, if you set aside the absolute head loss against Oxford, is Liam Walsh. He is someone that can come on and sort of bring the game to his speed, Lewis.
Yeah, he's someone that can dictate the play. We've seen his passing abilities against Millwall and against other teams this season. So for me, it was a bit bizarre that he didn't come on earlier. He should have come on about 20 minutes earlier, which, as has been touched on, Edwards is sometimes a bit susceptible to not bringing players on a bit earlier, whether that's a tactical reason, which is fully purposeful, which is he wants to delay leaving them, or whether it's just not being decisive enough in bringing them on. It was a bit of an odd one. Again, Walsh could have come on for Clark. Clark was in that more of a 6 kind of screen, and then Krause further forward, which personally I don't see why Clark's playing there if you've got Nakamba and you've got Walsh, because they are more suited to that role, and Clark's more of an 8 or 10. So I think Liam Walsh, come on, had a good little cameo, to be fair to him. He's maybe not going to start. I think he's behind Baptiste, he's behind Chong, he's behind Krause, etc. But he's someone that can definitely come on, dictate the play, which is what we needed, because as we touched on, the pace of the game was way too quick. He could have slowed it down. As we've seen, he's got a bit of a dark art streak in him, maybe a bit over the top in that Oxford game, but he does show he has got a little bit of bite about him. He did in the Millwall game as well. So personally, I think him and Nakamba coming on together would have been better. You got 2 fresh bodies in there. Him, Krause, and Nakamba would have been a good midfield trio to kind of see out a game, or at least slow it down, be a bit more shithousery, and maybe get a point, maybe get 3. Definitely not get 0.
Yeah, and sort of the dark art side of things, as you mentioned there, is something that we see a lot of other teams do against us, and it frustrates the hell out of us at Kenilworth Road. The likes of Sunderland's goalkeeper taking a long time on goal kicks and not getting booked for, until late in the game, which annoyingly, when we've tried with Kaminsky, seems to get booked most times he does it. But also other things we've seen other teams do, Sunderland included, is when the momentum is against them, a player go down with what's supposedly an injury, cramp or something, and all the players going over to speak to the manager. I don't think I've ever seen us do that under Edwards. And I don't know if that's because he doesn't want to do that or implement it into the game, or it's just not something our players want to do themselves, Jamie.
Yeah, I think we've done it a couple of times, maybe last year. But yeah, I think you're right. I think the only times that it's been a bit of a huddle on the touchline is when it's been an injury from another team. I think in the Watford game in particular, there's a few sort of Watford injuries that the guys went over. So same for Sunderland, but yeah, as you say, like just slow the game down, and I think on the game management in particular, like we scored a goal to go 1-1 against Sunderland, and there's just something in the mindset at that point, like why do we concede that second goal so quickly after scoring? Like, is there something in that game management there that I know you want to play up to the atmosphere and play up to the fans being behind you, obviously after equalising and being on top. But I think at that point, how long was left? 15 minutes, I think. It was around that. It was 15 or 20 minutes. You don't need to go and score straight away. Like as long as that game remains 1-1, the fans are behind you until minute 95 or 100. So you don't need to go out and score straight away. So just keep your cool and manage the game, and you know it over the next 15-20 minutes you're going to get another chance. So just stay in the game and just don't do anything silly that concedes the goal, but instead it's a ball pretty much over the top. You don't defend Mundell, who cuts in and hooks one, to be fair to him, pretty sweetly sort of round a keeper. So yeah, I just keep going back into a bit of a mental point where it's just seems to be like a mental block at times, and just really switching on in the right moments, which I think is really frustrating for Rob above anyone else, because clearly it's his job on the line at this point. So yeah, I'd be pulling my hair out if it was Rob.
Yeah, and we do tend to concede quite quickly, one after the other, which is very frustrating. And that's when you think, Lewis, that we'd like someone to just go down, slow it all down, and completely kill the momentum that's often against us. Because as myself, Jamie, and Adam discussed in the last podcast, when the momentum does seem to shift against us, we really struggle.
Yeah, I mean, it's an experienced squad. It's not like we've got, like a Sunderland, where we've got a massively younger squad. We've got Victor Moses, we've got Tom Krause, who, although 23, has played international football for under 21s. He's played Bundesliga. A lot of these players played Premier League last year. Kaminsky maybe takes his time wasting a bit too far, to be fair to him. It's a bit bizarre that we don't have these sort of game management tools, and especially when you consider 2 years ago, I don't know if we were masters at it as such, because obviously it wasn't like we was battering teams every week, but we got a lot of 1-0s. We knew when to slow the game down. We knew when to just sit in. This year, as Jamie just touched on, it seems like we just want to go for the kill. We get one, okay, it's time to go. It's not needed. We don't need to go for the kill just after getting a goal. 5 minutes, simple little 5 minutes, see it out, maybe even 10, and then you can look at it, especially second half. Then you go, oh, we can change it here, get some subs on. It's a bit of a bizarre one. I don't think it's a lack of not wanting to do it. I think it's more about a concern, like we did with Kaminsky. He got booked, and then obviously the other resulting yellow card, which was a bit of a assault case more than a yellow card. And then Mengi as well, who got booked in that Portsmouth game. I don't think it's a case of time wasting and going down with his injuries. Just players on the pitch kind of taking responsibility and going, you know what, we'll slow it down, we'll knock it about a bit, and go down that path without doing a Wickham or as much of a Sunderland. But to be fair to the Sunderland keeper, he did actually not play at the weekend, so maybe he was actually injured. I will give him that one caveat.
Yeah, it's something we've seen for the last couple of years, that when we score one, it seems to be like chaotic football after that. And it's very much reflected on the crowd, because I'm sure anyone who comes to Kenilworth Road will say the same thing. It is a pretty rowdy place to play after a goal's been scored. And it probably pushes onto the players. Let's get another. Let's really impose ourselves. But yes, as Lewis mentioned there, it's something that would probably benefit us to slow it down and take 10 minutes just to control the game and just bring down the tempo a bit before we go again. We're going to talk a bit of predictions now, and it's another tough game to predict, because whilst we have talked about a lot in this second half of this pod, we are still looking ahead to the visit of West Brom on Friday. So, Lewis, I'm going to come to you first.
Well, 3 of West Brom's last games have been 0-0 and one's been a 1-1. So you think it's going to be a low scoring affair, but equally we can't defend at the moment. We've got a lot of defensive injuries. They've got a lot of defensive injuries. So I want to go 2-2.
2-2. So there's certainly going to be goals in Lewis's opinion, and I'm sure the Sky cameras are going to appreciate that. Jamie, I'm coming to you next.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's as much as West Brom have only scored one in the last 4 or 5, and they've drawn the other 4. Clearly, obviously, they're struggling a bit going forwards, but I think that they're missing Carl Bartley, McNair, and Ajayi. I think for Friday, we're definitely missing Burke and Holmes and Doughty. Might be missing Mengi. So yeah, I think given the fact that there's probably upwards of 7 or 8 defenders sort of in both squads missing, yeah, I predict goals. I think we'll just nick it. I'm going to be positive. It's the age-old under the scoreline, under the floodlight score, and it's Luton 3, West Brom 2.
I mean, another cracker of a game there from Jamie. Hopefully, I've gone a bit lower on the scoreline. I do think both teams will score, and I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. So I'm not sure if that's a good enough result for anyone really, but I think that's what's going to happen. As always, we'd love to hear your score predictions, so let us know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or tweet us at Oak Road Hatter and let us know the score predictions from Friday. But as always, thank you for listening, and from Jamie, Lewis and myself, enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to Friday.